Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
I'd like to call the meeting to order, and would need a motion to approve the minutes of Tuesday, July 13th, 2021.
Motion to approve the minutes of July 13th. I'll second that.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion over the minutes?
I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says, review agenda items for special meeting, September 28th,
Where are you talking about? Oh, on the minutes?
on the back. Is that referring to like a joint board meeting?
That's a
That would
joint
be
board meeting, right?
Right, we haven't
Right,
really
it
set
didn't say
anything
that,
up
but
yet.
yeah.
Right.
So it should probably say joint,
For the joint board, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
just because it's not our special meeting for the
Okay.
trustees.
Yep.
Yep, that's good catch, thank you. Anyone else? All right, hearing nothing further, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we've done the minutes. Any additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting?
No, nothing.
Any public comment? There's no public here at the moment. Sorry, just doing it anyway. Manager's report.
Thank you. Just a couple of items. As you're all well aware, we had a little rain incident here recently. Had a little bit of flooding, some road erosion. Have had some calls with state officials as well as FEMA, the District 1 officials. And so far, they've tallied up about over $35 million worth of damage just in Windham County. Wow. Another 10 to 12 in Bennington, and another almost 15 in Addison County. So we're well within the guidelines to be requesting a federal disaster declaration. But there seems to be a little bit of time lag here. So in talking with the folks from District 1, they think it's going to be another 30 days till we get some sort of designation on about, on this actual emergency before they give us a declaration. Why? I don't know. They've been out and done damage assessment. We've submitted preliminary damage assessment. And the only reason why I'm telling you all this is because obviously we've spent money on repairs. We're going to have to spend money on some repairs at our in our streets and also in the clean out there at the end of the creek. And at this point, we'll have to assume those costs and assume that we're going to get reimbursed. If we don't get reimbursed, we'll have to have another conversation about how we're going to pay for all this damage. Most of the damage is in the gravel roads and more in the town than it is in Bellows Falls, but we still have some stuff that we have to spend some money on. So it's a little disconcerting that the process isn't a little farther along, and I'd be able to tell you we have a disaster declaration, and we'd feel good that the feds were going to pick up their percentage, the state was going to pick up theirs, and I would tell you our cost share would be X percent. So at this point, we just don't have that. So we'll wait and see.
Takes time to print more money,
Well, speaking of printing money, we did receive some ARPA funding. So this is the first of 2 payments that came through. So they hit the checking account actually this week. So we have some additional money in the checking account. We've segregated that money at this point in time because we still don't have all the guidelines related to how you can spend it. So we don't want to really do anything with it until we have a full set of what's required for compliance. We're going to get another payment on, I guess, and that one's coming in another 30 or 60 days. I can't remember. They said something in the next, it's relatively soon. And then we're going to get a third allocation because Vermont's a little different than other areas where the county allocation is actually going to be distributed obviously down through the towns and villages because Vermont, the counties in Vermont don't function as they function in other states. So there'll be some additional funds coming through that process as well. So when that's all said and done, we'll have that money, it'll be segmented, and then we'll have to have a conversation about the types of uses, types of projects, or the types of expenditures that you can use it for, and make sure that we're all in compliance, because I'm sure this will be an issue that they'll want to keep track of for audit and for other purposes. So just as a heads up,
Is there there's a separated amount for the town and a separated amount for the
we
village?
got two separate amounts,
Right.
one for the town, one for the
Okay,
village.
and right now, we've only gotten the first of three.
Only the first of two of those payments, and we'll
and
get
then a
another
third.
separate payment on the county portion, which will come through yeah, we got the 155, 199 for the village,
Mhm.
and the town was 77, 311, plus a little bit of change.
And we're
Scott,
not-
I
Yes.
had one, the flood damage, did it affect the sewer treatment plant or the water plant operations at all?
A little bit of gravel washout up around the water plant, but nothing significant. We were able to deal with that pretty much without a lot of expense. The operations of both plants were not really impacted.
Okay.
So we actually had a bigger impact from the lightning storm that knocked out the air conditioning unit at the police and fire building. That's actually, if you think about it, that was more direct damage, at least in terms of that building. And that project is, that's already been turned into the insurance. It's been approved, so we're in the process of getting that repaired. So be that as it may. Speaking of repairs, our friends from New Hampshire have been working on a bridge, and not terribly quickly, but they have been working. Unfortunately, and Deb's had some conversations with some folks, and I've had some conversation with some folks, the original traffic control patterns that we had all agreed to, where they were going to reroute traffic off of 91 and make sure that people weren't using the bridge, well, that all went to hell because of the storm, and now Route 12 having issues. So the bridge, if you've noticed, is basically handling full traffic. There is no detouring. The signs are up, but there is no enforcement and there is no detouring.
I heard yesterday, someone said that the actual condition of that break on Route 12 is worse than they anticipated. It's still collapsing.
It's not great,
Yeah.
because I was hoping maybe we'd see a reasonably quick fix, because this project itself on the Arch Bridge is supposed to go till the end of October.
Mhm.
But I think the Route 12 problems are going to go well past this, our bridge reconstruction.
Okay.
So be that as it may. So then we asked, okay, since you've changed the pattern and we've had some people that have had concerns about the intersection that have, can we get some enforcement? And basically we got minimal enforcement for a few days. And then recently they sent me another email and said they have no additional money for contingency for additional enforcement. So
They put up signs, but no one to enforce.
we had asked for uniformed officers on site during rush hours to be there to write tickets and enforce, some of the other traffic issues that we're observing on the bridge. But at this point, they're telling us that they don't have any additional enforcement to help with that site.
Is that the state or the town of Walpole?
That's state DOT from New Hampshire.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're sort of at it's an unfortunate confluence of events. If we spent or brought our own guys out there to do additional enforcement, it'd be our dollar. It'd be on our taxpayers to do that. That's always an option. And I guess we could always try to go back and see if we could get reimbursement.
Yeah.
But the information that I've been getting and working through our Vermont DOT folks plus the New Hampshire DOT folks has not been very encouraging. So maybe Deb's had a different experience than I've had.
No, I got an apologetic call from the director of, I don't know, the development director for the bridges. And all he could say was he was very sorry, but no matter what we had said before, we have to retract it because of the damage on 12. And so he couldn't speak to what kind of enforcement we could get. And the particular condition that I've been talking to Scott about and then to the state is because the signs are up, they should be stopping at the stoplight, but they're not. And the particular situation that I've seen is tractor trailer coming onto the bridge from our side and a tractor trailer running a light on the New Hampshire side, and you have a passenger vehicle in between. There's no room for two TTs. So that's the problem,
Right.
which will continue. We hope that perhaps if they enforce it on one side, it would prevent having them do that. But that's not going to be the case. They're saying they don't have enforcement. You've had the most luck with the enforcement. Ann.
Right. We got, like I said, we got minimal enforcement. I even hesitate to say it was even, I mean, it was a few days at the most. And it wasn't, what we had asked for. We had asked for, real
Yeah.
coverage.
So I would ask the public to be very cautious when they use the bridge, especially if they see a tractor trailer, give them enough wide berth because it's too narrow, and do what they can to be as safe as possible crossing that bridge.
Stay at those stop bars, stay out of that intersection. If you don't play the normal game, everybody tries to beat the yellow light and try to get into the intersection, because if you do, there might be a good chance you're going to get stuck, as Deb said, in between pretty large tractor trailers, those 53-footers trying to make that turn. It's a hairy situation there. So, at this point, I would say be cautious, be aware, try to stay as, keep your car at those stop bars so that you're out of that intersection. And, let's hope that they can meet their schedule. I'm a little concerned with all the delays they've already had, and I've already started to question them about liquidated damages, because if they run past October, I don't think that it's fair that we have to continue to suffer whatever these traffic problems and issues are beyond their permit date. And so their permit expires the end of October. And, so far we haven't gotten a lot of relief, but, I'm hammering our folks, and maybe I'll need some of you guys to hammer them too. Don't extend that damn permit. Not without significant resources for traffic control or other mitigation for us, because we're taking the abuse, and we're getting no relief. All we're getting is, like
Tell
you
them to
said,
fix the Vias Bridge.
well, the infrastructure plan passed today. Let's see, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, Shaheen said $35 billion is the email I got. Is the
just for the
infrastructure
Vilas Bridge?
for
That's
ro-
perfect.
No,
Oh.
for roads and bridges. Roads
Oh.
and bridges was second, not first.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it includes roads and bridges to nowhere probably like
Yeah.
last time.
Well, yeah, that's been a little frustrating too, but I
So I'm just
think,
saying there's an option. You can have an extension from October if they just repair the Vilas Bridge.
well,
Good luck.
I think we'll just keep hammering home, but it's not been a great experience. I think everybody's pretty frustrated. And obviously nobody expected tropical damage from that storm, but even so.
Yeah.
That's what contingencies are for, and that's kind of what I've been telling them. Well, now you have to make amends. You got to make, arrangements for this, and we're just not getting anywhere. So
Yeah.
it's frustrating. So that's the basic update for now. So
Okay. We move on to the agenda. First item is the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust update. Oh,
could we
That's
just maybe
that's not what
jump-
you meant, was it?
No. It's for
I was gonna
wastewater.
say.
Wastewater.
Yeah, but can
You
we
meant-
jump it a little bit out of sequence, and maybe since we do have Cynthia here?
Oh, sure.
Maybe we could jump to that, since she was.
Technically, according to statute, I should have moved it immediately, but at the beginning of
My
the meeting,
apologies,
but.
I got sidetracked.
Well, since you had the wrong item on there anyway.
I was
didn't even
annoyed, I
notice
was
it.
annoyed by the bridge, so it got me all annoyed. Got me
That
all
makes
out of-
sense. Get some, and make best use of.
So Cynthia did share a memo with sort of what her current work plan is, and this is a loose work plan, but things she's found, things she's been doing, and then I think she's going to talk a little bit more about things that we have yet to do. Some of these things, I think, are things that we were not aware of when we started. So I think there's a little frustration that we had sort of given you an idea that we thought we could get on top of some of this stuff with a eye towards September, and we thought we felt pretty good. And Cynthia got more into the numbers, and she kept coming to my office saying, I think this is a problem, I think that's a problem. Each time she said that, it turned out to be a problem, and it required more effort and more work, and it's set us back in terms of trying to get to our trial balance so that we would have everything ready for you for September. So that's a little bit of an overview. Maybe we can jump into this in more detail, and I do appreciate Cynthia coming. She's been a tremendous resource for us and incredibly helpful, and unfortunately she's been here before, so this is kind of old hat to her. She's
And
like
again,
deja
and
vu.
again. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's good or bad, but I appreciate it.
She didn't refuse to come.
No,
You
she
gotta look
did
at it
not
from that standpoint.
refuse, and I appreciate that she has come, because we are digging through a whole host of problems. So maybe with that, I'll let Cynthia jump in from there.
So this memo was actually written for the last meeting, so I apologize that it doesn't say trustees.
I put trustees on there.
Okay, good.
It's underneath, yeah. we're
Okay.
there.
I
We're
amended
there.
it.
I
Amen.
didn't know about the meetings, so I didn't make a new memo. But, so, as Scott was saying, that when I go to a place to help out, it's kind of like, I think the analogy I used last time was when you have a carpenter come over because you have a leak in the corner and you think all he has to do is fix that one thing, and he opens it up, and then the rest is you've got to fix this and you've got to call the plumber and you've got to do all these other things. So that's kind of how I felt since I've been here, is that when I uncover one thing, I then have to find the other side, because obviously accounting is double entry. I've got to find the other side of it. That then might lead to something else. So it's just been kind of this process of trying to solve this puzzle and put all the pieces together. So when I work on it for this particular entity, there's the two entities, which is the village and the town. It's all just one big puzzle to me, because the village and the town, we have the same financial system, and if you make an entry incorrectly to one fund, it could affect the other fund. So I'm doing everything all at once. I'm not like saying this is the town's books, this is the village books. It's all kind of, it's not, I don't want to say it's mixed together, because there's very separate financial statements, but when things cross or in the wrong fund, then it has to be fixed. So I started in June. June 14th was the first day I think I was here to kind of look things over. And the basic premise at that point was to get the bank account reconciled, because the audit can't even start unless you have your bank account reconciled. They won't even come in. What I found when I sat down was that it hadn't been reconciled for about 11 months. So I started with that. Let me just jump back to the other thing that I started with was working with the auditor to make sure, because the audit had just kind of wound up at that time, make sure that the adjusting journal entries that they had proposed had been entered. So I sent the auditor, they were very good. I was like, I can't look through this. You need to just tell me if the numbers are right with what you have. They took a trial balance from me, they compared the numbers, and they said, no, they hadn't been posted yet. What I also found out during that time was there were journal entries from the previous year that also had not been, so beginning balances had to be adjusted. So we started with that. That way I knew when I closed the books, we had the right numbers to start FY22 from the audit, so that we matched with what theirs was. That was because if I had closed, we can't go back 2 years, so we would have been more in a mess. So that was the first step. The bank reconciliation was the second. I would say 85% of the transactions that go through the books, cash receipts, property tax billing, accounts receivable, payments of to vendors, payroll, 85% of that is just done through automated systems. Post a payroll, it goes over there. The other, 15% is recording of deposits from, the biggest one is the state of Vermont. They do ACH deposits. So if you get a grant, it comes automatically into your bank account. Those I had to find them. I would go through the bank statement, I would see them on there. Then it might take time to research what it even is. The statements you get from the state, they're not very descriptive. So a lot of them I know, just because everybody gets the same ones, but then there was some grant information that I didn't know. So those were missing for 11 months, 10 months.
Missing, in other words, they hadn't been
They
accounted.
hadn't been posted.
They hadn't been
Yeah.
posted.
The debt payments, which was mostly village-related, sewer, water, USDA loans that needed to be paid. They were paid, but they were automatically deducted from the bank account. Those I had to record. They had not shown up on a warrant anywhere.
No, they hadn't shown
so-
up on the financial statements.
No, so we've changed that process. Anything that gets done through that type of process will now go through payables. It'll be on a warrant. Just because it's deducted from the bank account automatically doesn't mean we can't put it on a warrant. There's a process that we can do. So
Okay.
Brenda and I have covered that, and we'll start doing that.
And you know, Cynthia, prior to this past year,
Mhm.
they did, debt payments did appear on the
Yeah.
warrant.
The other area that took a little bit of time for me to reconcile were the way the credit card fees. When you make a payment to the town, we collect a fee, and then at some point, the credit card company takes a fee. So I had to figure all that out. They weren't like one-to-one kinds of transactions, so I had to record the fees coming in and then the fees going out.
It was explained to me that the reality is we aren't charging enough in our credit card fees, so we're kind of eating it right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah,
The difference, that's why they don't match up.
yeah,
either.
yeah. It's, the credit card company is a little difficult
They're
to
incredibly
to
difficult.
get a hold of. So, I mean, I know Scott's been working with them, and it's on our to-do list to
We'll
try
have
to sort that
RFP
out, yeah.
For new merchant services,
Of course.
point of
Yeah.
sale, because it's been an aggravation.
Yeah,
And we have that issue about the percentage, so
Mhm.
we gotta talk
Right.
about that.
Because when we approved it, I know this board, it was with the understanding that they would charge the same fee that the bank was
yeah, from what I
charging us.
from what I understand, it was something to do with COVID. We reduced the fee on our end.
I can't find a board action that
I don't
supports
either.
that, so
Never.
it's all
I don't remember we did, I
anecdotal.
remember
never-
hearing us being told that it was
Right.
a very low rate, but that, the exactness of that, we did not yet.
Yeah.
So it was too vague.
We're not charging what we're getting charged
Right,
from the
right.
other
We're
end.
not charging very
Right.
much and we're paying more, yeah.
Right.
Right. I can tell you right now, I have not split that cost between the town and the village. The town has it right now.
Woohoo! Eventually that will have to happen.
We got a
I
very
know.
small part of that.
Yeah. If there was a return check, somebody bounced a check, the side of the accounts receivable, that was all being handled correctly. The return would happen on the person's account, but then there was a follow-up journal entry that needed to be done. I had to do. I mean, and then recording of what I call direct debit payments. If you automatically have your payment taken out of your account for your taxes, that all was being done properly. There's a follow-up journal entry that has to be done to move it to cash. So those had to be done. So those items were the things on every bank statement that just had to be researched, took time, posting. So I did all the posting of those. Once that was done, I knew at least everything that had gone through the bank account was there. There wasn't, and we talked about this in the finance committee meeting. When I got done, there was about a $30,000 difference. I did a journal entry to put that $30,000 in a reconciling items account, which is also on the town side. The town kind of took anything I wasn't really
Sure about yet?
sure about. I did find an entry that I'm trying to track back that was an outstanding deposit for $31,000 that seems to be at some point in time, it was a duplicate entry. So I just need to find the other side of that to see which fund that went to see if maybe that fund's overstated by that amount. So that's something that's on the list of review, and hopefully I can do it before the auditor comes. If not, we'll sort it out. Trial balance, then I started the process of just looking at the trial balance and looking at balance sheets, and there was a COVID grant, and I know this has been a question. We received a COVID grant, I think it was $129,000, that I wasn't sure where it should be allocated. I didn't want to allocate it all to the general fund because I knew some of the reimbursement was coming for expenses throughout the different funds. Gary put together a great spreadsheet that gave me the breakdown. All of the expenses, other than payroll related expenses, but had been allocated to a COVID expense line in the town. So whatever was not town, I moved to the appropriate fund. So the expenses have been moved. Then I moved the appropriate amount of the reimbursement over to the fund that it belonged to. So when you get your new financial statements, you'll see those. I just labeled it COVID grant expenses, and then there's a COVID revenue. So
Yes, as I recall, we were told that they were all being done through the town. We're
Yeah.
told that. Isn't necessarily correct, but that was what we were told.
yeah, well, It was true,
It
but
was
that's
true.
not right.
That's not the way it should be
Yeah.
done. That's just the way it was done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I did a reconciliation of the health insurance line. There were some employees that were either a workers' comp issue, that for whatever reason, the person's still on insurance, but is not being paid through payroll. So when that happens, the payroll system is what creates the liability for your
Right.
health insurance. If it's not run through payroll, the liability isn't set up in order to pay the bill. So those individual people, we have to take their bill and we've got to code it to the right expense line when the bill comes in instead of hitting the liability. So I'm trying to reallocate those, trying to figure out who they are. And from this point on, when the bill comes in, it will, those people, there's like 3 of them, will allocate their expense to the right expense line. And so that, because if you look at a balance sheet, the health insurance line is way overstated.
On the balance sheet.
Yeah. So I'm working through those benefit payroll items on the balance sheet. The other big area that I really needed to focus on first across the board were property taxes, making sure your receivables matched what was your outstanding list at June 30. This is what we owe, this is what is on the balance sheet, that the revenue lines made sense for what we had billed, that any people that had overpaid their taxes and had an unavailable credit sitting at June 30, that number matched the balance sheet of the liability that was there. So all of that's been sorted out throughout the cemetery gets some property taxes, the highway, the town, the village. So all of that's been sorted out and it matches with what we've billed and what the state made for state payments and all that. I did give the sewer budget status to Rob. He went through it. There was a couple of things that didn't look quite right. We reallocated a couple expenses. Just wanted him to look at to see if he had any feedback. The way that I have to do this is I'm here 2 days a week. So I need as many eyes on this stuff as I can. And the people that are here, they know the history. They've sat through budget meetings. I don't know any of that history. So I'm just trying to pull it together with the knowledge that I have from where I've previously worked and worked here, and just trying to, sometimes I'm guessing a little bit, not a lot, but so having other people look at the things. Sean also looked at the fire department. Him and I sorted out some things there. We don't need to talk about revolving loan funds, right?
That's all town. Yep.
Yeah. We're in the process of reviewing all of the grants. Gary gave me a spreadsheet, and the day he gave it to me, my brain was done. And we just need to get a handle on where we are with open grants, who they belong to, what entity they belong to, where we're at with them. Thank goodness he's keeping really good records, because I'm struggling a little bit to find some things, but that might be something that we work through at the audit as well. Tax clearing and the variance accounts. I don't know if you guys have seen the balance sheet. There's a variance account that all that does is act as a clearing account. So when the system works, the taxes are collected through what we call a cash receipt program. It debits the variance account. When the accounts in tax administration are all posted and updated with the payments, that transfers over and clears that account. So it should always be at zero once you're done with the whole cycle. Those were way off. So between the town and the village, they were way off. So that also throws your due to from out of balance, because
That's the area of irritation all the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what it ended up being, the bulk of the difference was that a payment would come in and it might get posted incorrectly to all town. And then it's like, oh shoot, I didn't mean to do that. Reverse the entry and then repost it, and then it posts to the village. No big deal. Those things happen. There's a ton of money being passed through here. Today I watched it happen. It's a ton of money. It's the follow-up to correct the variance accounts after that wasn't done. So when we did it, it was a whole year's worth that I had one of my colleagues come down, and she just went through and just found every transaction that didn't balance out to zero, and we did the entries to correct it. So those are okay now.
So when we see the balance sheet,
Mhm.
the due to, due from, you're comfortable with?
No,
Oh, okay.
the variance account.
There it is.
I'll get to the due
No,
to
no,
Said it
from.
affects it. It's not-
I'll
we're
get to the
hoping.
due to from, because I know that's a, yeah.
So that variance account, that should be something that's happening as
Yes.
it occurs.
Yes, so,
Right.
so the other thing that's going on while we're trying to do this back work is looking at the first 2 periods of this year, because
Right.
so if I do an entry to last year, I did it today. I reconciled all of the accounts payable accounts across the entire system. The accounts payable accounts were off. I knew the entry I needed to make, but then I moved to the new year and said, if I make that entry, what's going to happen? And thankfully, on the new year, it ended up clearing it out. So, but I try not to make the entry to any balance sheet accounts unless I know how it's going to affect the new year, because then I'm in the new year and I'm off still. So with the variance account, I ran a report maybe last week and said, okay, I was off, I don't know, $300 and something. I don't know what it was. And I immediately go to Pam and say, did you have a return check? And she's got a copy of it. And then I do the entry and it's over with, so
But
it's just,
done and fine with
it's
that.
just a
Right, it
matter.
doesn't get compounded, yeah.
Yeah,
Doesn't get lost.
yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to take a couple hours a day while I'm here just to do current stuff, because I'm here 2 days a week. This is a full-time job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not telling you I'm gonna find everything or fix everything, but I'm trying. So that whole process, those are a few of the things I've looked at. That whole process is just continuing. Where I was at today was actually going through all of the funds, starting with the general fund, and just going down through printing a trial balance of each fund. Does it look right? Does it have the right balance from last year? Sending Scott questions if I'm concerned about something. So eventually, within the next few weeks, I'll be down to the village account. Well, probably the next time I come, I'll be into those doing that.
Is that for the new year or for
For
last?
FY21. So we did contact the auditors today. We're hoping to get on their schedule. My feeling is the sooner the better. We'll give them what we got,
Yeah,
and they can help us
work through it.
sort
yeah.
some things out. Josh is very helpful. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's not happy that has a cell phone on his email because I call it. But he's always helpful, and so I think I would feel comfortable having them come in and just within, I think it's going to be a while before we get on their schedule, but we'll see what they say. So that work continues. The due to from. I haven't even begun to look at that yet because I don't know if there's other crossed funds issues. Like if I get into the village and say, oh, that's not a village expense, that's a sewer expense, that affects the due to from. And if I do that entry, so there's no reason for me to look at past until I know that the fiscal year I'm working in, that all of the items are allocated to the best of my ability to the correct fund, then we'll know where we are at with the due to from. I also contacted Josh about that because it's a monumental task to go back. And I think that's what's going to have to happen. They do have another division within their auditing firm that can do that kind of work to help sort that out that doesn't affect his ability to audit.
Right.
So that's an option that we might go to at that point. Just because with everything else, I don't know. I won't know how I feel about sorting out the due to from until I sit down to try to do it. And I just haven't yet because I've had to be moving things between funds now.
The part of the question was the receipt of funds from the government based on the completion of our various water and sewer projects.
Oh, well, yes. Can I just stop you there? Because
Yeah.
you're right. There were some very large draws
Mhm.
off of, was it USD? I don't remember who it was.
Mostly USDA.
USDA,
I
right?
think, yeah.
That came into the bank account that I recorded, and that was what, February, and it was within 2021. It wasn't. Yeah, so those have been posted. So I think we will see.
Yay.
Yeah. I mean, I can send you a trial balance so that, because we should get together as a finance committee again too,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
and that might help a little bit. I just haven't really looked at it that closely.
What does it say?
Video froze.
Oh. Well, that's the person, yeah, but they're not frozen right now. I can see that. They moved we see that, Mr. Mitchell.
Looks like you're froze.
I know that's who it is.
I
don't
think
even
I'm
see his
froze.
face.
Oh, is that you?
Yeah.
Well, that would be on
Oh, okay. Anyway.
Max and he's, oh. Okay. Oh, so it wasn't Jim. It was Fact TV that said that. It's usually him.
Okay.
Oh, man. Then I gotta come down here. Right here.
For a few minutes when we were talking about secret things, nobody knows who it is.
Okay. So yes, there were large draws off of that ended up being deposited that I did record as part of that bank rec, which I think will maybe, hopefully, answer some of that
Well,
question.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
I realize it's not done yet.
Yeah.
Not totally, you're not certain.
No, but I will send it a new trial balance to, I mean, I'll send it to anybody that wants it, but I will send one to you, Jigs, so that you can look at it for me. So that's pretty much in a nutshell what I've done as far as the financial statements. I want to mention the payroll issue that we have. I reconciled the second quarter 941 and we found some significant errors that needed correction. I had Darlene Kelly, who works for NIMRIC, come in because I know she's really good at the whole payroll reconciliation too. And I just had so much to do. I was like, I just need to delegate this to somebody. So she did the first quarter for me. She found some errors, and then that's when we ran across, there are a few employees that have, and they know who they are at this point, I think. They had wages paid, but one person had no federal wages, no state wages, and no taxes taken for 2020.
Oh, for the entire year?
Yeah, and for this last, 7 months or whatever.
Oh, no.
There were a couple other people that had that happen, but it wasn't the whole year. It was kind of sporadically. And what happened was there was a request for no taxes to be taken out on a particular paycheck, federal and state. And instead of using in the software, you can have it not take federal and state, but still report the wages. There was a box for total exemption that was checked instead of using the other function. That box for total exemption says on there extremely rare in big red letters. So it was for one person in particular, it was turned off and then not turned back on.
After that pay period.
Yeah, so we're working through those. That process of working through that and doing corrected 941s and corrected W-2s will probably not be corrected until the end of September, early October. I just don't see how we're gonna fit that. Yeah. The first 2 quarters will be correct. I mean, the second quarter of this year is fine. The first quarter of this year needs to be corrected. That will be done quickly. It's the 2020 stuff. There was another instance where, do you want to talk about this, the
Sure.
fringe? So,
Some of the fringes were set up wrong,
Yeah.
including mine.
yeah,
So Cynthia will have to go back with Darlene and Brenda and recalculate, because the insurance payment wasn't set up correctly.
Yeah, so the insurance
Right.
incentive should be set up as a wage, taxable wage. It was set up as a taxable fringe.
Oh.
So the money was never actually issued. So we're gonna have to pay Scott some money.
Deducted,
Yeah. So,
and I wasn't the only one, there were some other people.
Other people
that had
affected as
issues.
well.
yeah.
So
you'll
this
see
way it
that.
was set up.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're gonna see some of these corrections as we get through, right, some of these, and that's.
You'll see them on the, they'll be on the payroll warrant, right? So.
Well, it
Yeah, I
looked to
have-
me throughout the year that the fringe or the employee benefit sections of certain accounts, whether it was health insurance or insurance incentive, weren't showing, like, it was like there was no employees there.
Yeah,
And-
I think some of that
and
has
I-
to do with the reconciliation I need to do with the liabilities, like I was saying earlier, the health
Okay.
insurance. This particular fringe issue, the payment should have been a payment and it was set up as a fringe. I haven't quite narrowed down how that affected the financial statements, but we'll work on that. We have to work on that before next payroll, at least that
So
one.
it doesn't happen again.
Now, are
Well,
these gonna-
we've already fixed
caught
it.
it.
Yeah,
Right.
and I've also said, if someone wants to have a change in their withholding, they have to give us a W-4.
Right.
Yep.
We will change it. If they want it changed back for the next payroll, they have to give us another
Another one.
W-4.
Right.
That we can't, that there's no,
That's the only clean way to do it.
yeah. And, yeah, so that's already been established. There's no, I mean, I'm kind of setting some rules, and I don't really know how much authority I have, but
Write
some
'em-
of this
write
stuff
'em
I'm
down.
just saying.
You write them down, you hand it over to Scott, he signs off on it, Will.
Yeah.
Good, every time we talk, say, keep going,
Yeah, so,
gotta fix.
Will
the
these
problem.
be, these kinds of issues, are they going to be, you mentioned you closed the books on 21. Will these be adjusting entries this year in 20, no?
so
where it ought to
I
be,
have physically pushed the
my
button
opinion.
to do a period close so that we could move on to the new year. I am adjusting back to FY '21, yeah. Every adjustment that I do, has the backup to it, a note on it, and hopefully I put enough information on it so that when the auditors come and they look up an adjusting entry, I can explain to them with what I put on there, what it was. Accounts payable, we already talked about the large debt payments not being recorded through AP. That has been changed. That won't happen again. And then return checks, those are the same. That's if it gets, when a return check happens, I get a document and a journal entry is being done. So one of the things that I just wanted to briefly cover though was there was talk about possibly having the auditor help with best practice and some policies and that kind of thing. You guys have those. We just need to put them back in place.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that, I mean, I think it has been my experience here that especially when I first came here, I think it was Nikki that was the first time I worked here. She was leaving for another job or something. And I was impressed with the practices that were in place. Journal entries were signed off on, there was this process that happened, and that's just kind of fallen by the wayside, and we'll just get those back as I'm going. We're talking about all that. And then the only other thing that came up today that's not on here is Scott and I this Thursday.
Yep.
We're meeting with, I think her name's Alyssa at the bond bank, just to review all of the loans that you have, because there were some that were not paid last year. There was like a reprieve because of COVID.
Right.
So they weren't paid, so they need to vamp their what do I want to say? The schedule, the amortization schedule.
Right.
Some of those bonds are coming back up in September to be paid, and I noticed they're different than the last time we paid them. And that's because they've re-amortized everything.
Right, because of.
Okay.
They're
I
not
see.
hugely different, but they are a little different. So when I looked back in the records to try to figure out where I should post it, then And maybe the only other thing when we're on the subject of the bonds.
Some of the debt payments were made and some were deferred.
Exactly,
Right.
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
So when you get the financial statement, just so you know, in the financial statement on the expenses, there's a principal and there's an interest expense line. The ones that have interest posted to them, we also paid the principal, but you'll see it's 0, and that's because I directly hit the balance sheet liability. Because the auditor's gonna make us do it anyways. The ones that I paid this year, I did expense them, so you can see it on your expenditure report, but at fiscal year end, we'll have to move those over to reduce the liability, because you've got to reduce that liability on your balance sheet, or if it's never going to be right. But I can see why you guys want to see it during the year, that you know it's been paid, it's been expensed, this is part of our budget and our rate setting.
Right.
So
Right.
I'll just leave it that way, and then hopefully next June, somebody will know to reallocate it to the
Yeah, 'cause
liability.
having that amortization schedule next month when we do the rates is
Correct.
going to be important.
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to talk about just that general conversation about rates, but one of the things we wanted to get straight was that we knew everything that was supposed to be in our water and sewer fund, so that we were comfortable then breaking that down to you about what's our debt service, what's our, just the general financial condition. And I think we'll have a pretty good handle on that after we work this through with them.
Yeah, because the schedule, we received a schedule from a previous finance director fairly late in the fiscal year. And it showed the schedule for this coming year, or the year we're in currently. And it showed, there was a number of credits. They were all applied to the water fund. And the response was that that's what the bond bank guy told them, but just didn't make sense that everything would be allocated. But I don't know. I mean, I
Yeah,
think,
so we'll go over that with her on Thursday. She did tell me today, I was a little confused at why some of the bills I was looking at had principal and no interest. And what she told me was that I hope I get this right, there was a time when there was negative interest.
right, yeah,
And what they did this time, what they did was they reallocated that negative interest and just reduced the principal. So the credits will no longer be on the bills like maybe what you've been used to seeing. And so the principal amount that you're paying is what is due after that reallocation of those credit interests. So
okay.
the other one that I talked to the other day, I think it was USDA. I wanted to give the bill to Brenda to post, but I didn't know how to do the principal and interest because they were only talking about a $1 amount they were going to deduct from the account. And I was told that they don't have an amortization schedule. The day they take it is when they figure out what the
They build it all
interest
in at the
is.
same time.
Yeah,
split it up.
so that one's a little tricky to put in prior to the payment being taken out and having it signed for, because you can't allocate, you gotta wait to see what the interest is, and then the rest goes to principal. So she was gonna send me what she thought it was gonna be. So there's a lot of debt to keep track of.
Yeah.
It's a little overwhelming, but I'm trying to sort through it, so.
One of the things that I remember, this is not something you'll be able to be dealing with, and that is having a procedure manual. So things that what you said earlier, but I hope somebody remembers to next year. The reality is those all need to be calendared and recorded, and a process for each item needs to be made up, and that's, I guess, is time consuming. But it's an essential tool, especially with the kind of turnover we've unfortunately had. Having something like that means this stuff doesn't fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
Right.
And you do know how to take care of
Yeah.
all of these overwhelming number of transactions that have to occur.
Yeah. I mean, I have heard discussions, because I've been watching the board meetings, and I have heard the comment that when you look for somebody, that you want somebody with municipal experience, I can tell you that is probably going to be very rare. Not saying it's not out there, but I can tell you that accounting is accounting. And a liability is a liability. And if you're an accountant, you know that when the year ends, the liability has to, and I know what you're saying.
No, I
It's
know
nice
what
to have a
happened
book.
But the last two finance
Yeah.
directors didn't have any municipal experience, and one of them had been doing it for decades.
Yeah.
And
What,
still didn't know how to do it.
yeah. And one of the things that you have to know about here is that it has to be somebody that can work in the weeds too.
Yeah.
So they can't be somebody that has overseen a group of people.
Yeah, and that was one of the problems. He said he always
Yeah.
had someone else doing it for him.
I just want to reiterate that they don't have to have municipal experience. A lot of the stuff that I'm talking about has nothing to do with municipal
Right.
accounting.
Mhm.
I
This-
agree wholeheartedly, because if you set that as a prerequisite, you're just going to narrow a already narrow field down.
Yeah.
But we
and,
don't want to fall into the same pit.
No.
I
no,
agree.
have
you
I
last
agree.
4
I'm not.
years.
And I don't want to get into the details of past or whatever. But I just want to the items that I'm talking about on here. Most of them have nothing to do with it being a municipality.
Right.
No, it's just that accounting wasn't
It's
done
accounting.
properly.
It's accounting.
Mhm.
That- Yeah.
So don't try not to get yourselves too, when you're looking for the next person, too ingrained in that it has to be somebody that has municipal experience. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, I want to thank you for
Or
all your time.
25
Does anyone
cents.
have
Yeah,
any other questions
thank you.
for Cynthia? Are we all set?
I've said it 100 times to Scott. It's like, I'm only here 2 days a week. I'm not a magician.
So how, from a time horizon, I mean,
Uh-huh.
I'm just
Yeah.
curious, like 6 months, 5 months, 8
No,
months?
like I said, I really want
I mean,
to.
looking at the big picture.
Yeah, I can tell you if the auditors told me they were gonna be here next month, I would have it as ready as, I would let them come in today, and because I'm feeling better. I was really concerned about even reconciling accounts payable accounts today, and I had to do some entries, but I got it done. So it's moving, and I don't think 6 months, a couple months.
They'll probably be here in October like they were last year. Or
Yeah,
the end of September. That's what I'm.
yeah. October would be a good
Yeah.
time frame
Yeah,
for
we're
me, I
hoping.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that would give us time to work out trial balances and
Yep.
Yeah. I
feel
think
good
our-
about where we
I think most of
stand.
the school are showing up.
Yeah.
That's a different company.
I would say by October, mid-October, I'll feel comfortable at least. And right now I want to hand out some information for people to look
Well,
at.
I
just-
was going to ask you if you would feel comfortable enough to be able to provide us in September at our first meeting, a year to date for this year.
When is
fiscal
your
year.
first meeting in September?
14.
Oh, a year
14th?
to date, the
Yeah.
FY
A year to
22?
date for this
22.
year.
Oh,
We haven't
sure.
seen
Yeah,
one in months,
absolutely, yeah.
So
Yeah,
Right.
it'd be nice to see one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just to
We
see
should
how we're-
hopefully have a
how we're
trial
going.
balance for the previous, we're hoping, and maybe what we've,
Yeah.
our first 3 months of this year for that meeting.
Yeah, I think I've driven it home enough that everybody knows that it might not be perfect.
Right.
And I think you're feeling
No,
more
we're
comfortable
used
with
to
it when
that.
than when you started, so.
Yeah, what'd you say?
We're used to that.
Yeah, that's.
I don't-
That's
it's
not
me.
a good
No
go-to
reflection on
place.
you.
No, I know, but it's me. I'm not, I like to, if I put a number in front of somebody, I like them, when they ask me what it means, I like to say, that's that, and that. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
because I get a
We want to
little,
have confidence that even with the trial balance, that
Right.
we're at a good place. And, because
Yeah,
this
please.
is, it's a little bit disconcerting to keep coming back to you with, oh, by the way, we found
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z. It's not a comfortable
Yeah,
situation
but
for us to
At
be in.
least it's in the pipeline
We're
and being
getting there.
fixed.
Well, the other
we-
thing
and
is,
we
we're not
feel
going to
it.
withhold any information, so what we're finding is what we're reporting. So
Yeah.
there's no hidden surprises
I get
here.
that,
Whatever
and-
comes up, comes up. So
And I
we're
thank
going
you
to work through it.
for actually, I hope I didn't pound you by asking, making sure she did show up, because I thought it was important that if we have
oh,
questions.
no, it's fine.
We should
Yes.
not have to ask a piece of paper, or
Right.
you who may not have the answer, but ask the person who's actually doing the work. So
Yep.
I appreciate your
Oh,
the
yeah, no
extra
problem.
effort being here tonight.
No.
And I think, you deserve along with Pam and Brenda, a attaboy for
Yeah.
the work that you've put in and what you guys have accomplished and what you had to work with.
Well, like I said at the last meeting, I do love this work. Like, it's a puzzle.
Sure.
Right,
You're-
big puzzle.
But I did
Puzzle
say,
solver.
Thank
but
God.
I did say the last time that I'm not sure Scott thought I loved it the first couple weeks that I was here, but
We're
It's-
working through some issues.
Yeah, but it does give me a little bit like, so you find this and you're like, oh, that's
No,
what
it's
it
a
is.
solution.
So,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like, I
so
gotta
I
see-
do,
Right.
Yeah.
I do, but I just want it right for you guys to be able to make financial decisions
Well, we
and the
appreciate-
taxpayer to be
appreciate
able
that.
to.
I'll tell you one thing that just, when you hear the scope of, of the situation, what you found, I mean, when we requested the auditor's letter, after the audit was finally finished, and we read it, we were taken aback, we were concerned. But given what you've told us, it would seem to me that the auditor would have been sending out signals, at least to Scott or something. I mean, I know how it works. I mean, obviously, for the auditor to get a job doing the books, you've got to have the buy-in of the finance director. So they're kind of the customer of the auditing firm. But gee, I mean, this seems to rise to a level that there should have been.
Yeah, like I said
Should
at
have
the
heard
last
more,
meeting,
but-
because somebody else asked that question, and I can't speak to the year he audited, whether this was the experience that he had or not. I don't know. So it may not have been to this level. And the other thing is they do testing. So they're not looking at
Right,
every
they're sampling.
transaction like I am.
Right.
And they're looking at June 30 numbers. And if the June 30 number says $100,000 and there's a schedule behind it that says $100,000, so that's the hard, I can't spep to FY20. I can just speak to.
Well,
what
that's
I've
right,
seen,
and that,
yeah.
and that's true.
So
They
not
did
to be-
audit 2020 and not
Yeah.
2005.
Not that he feels left out, but that a boy for Jakes too, being
Yeah.
the financial hawk and with the experience and oversight.
Well, the goal here is that I think at the end of this process, you won't be frustrated with where we are. And I think the questions that you asked, we can at least give you answers that we can stand behind. And so I think that's really where we've been trying to get to.
Well,
It's a lot of work.
And from our standpoint too, from NIMRIC, is that we want you to have confidence in the software. We want the software to be helpful, not a hindrance. And it, when it's used to the fullest
Properly,
extent, it's a workhorse. So we want to make sure that's what we're selling too. And so
We appreciate everything.
Okay.
And I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Cynthia.
so much.
All right, I will send out a report, though. I don't know if all of you want to see it, but I don't mind sending it out. The more eyes on it to say, what the heck is this? And then it makes me look at it, because I can't look at every single line item and every single transaction for FY21. I
No.
just can't. It's just not going to
It
happen.
certainly isn't gonna hurt if you, put all of our names
Okay.
on it and send it.
Yeah.
Jake
Yeah.
will look at it. I know I will.
Right.
We'll see who else has time. So
Okay,
that'd be great.
thank you.
All right, thank you so
Thanks.
much. Moving on to the first item, then go back to number 1.
Yes. Yeah, but I'm by phone or emailing.
And
Yeah.
of course, it was supposed to be the wastewater treatment plant at WWTP that we visited at 5:30.
Right. So just a couple of things, and more the board's aware, but more for general public, was we did get our Class A biosolid designation. We're waiting from Vermont, but we did get it from New Hampshire. As the board saw this evening, we went down and took a look at the dryer in operation, was able to get some questions, just sort of walk us through the process, ask some questions about operations. We're working now at a unsupervised capacity, which is important. I think the board's been concerned that we could only get the operation to work with the SCADA, with having somebody present. It's now running without having to be watched or manually adjusted or operated. So that was all good news. The reason that's important is we've talked about a September discussion of rates. A big part of that is going to be how we look at the operation of the dryer and how we think it's going to be part of our process going forward. The current agreement expires in September. We have had conversations that we should have an extension coming to take a look at for September. so that we don't have to make a final decision until later on in December. So as we're farther into our budget discussions for the next fiscal year. So it will buy us some time.
I have a question,
Yes.
which is we had planned on, we were paying sort of to lease, in the project, a certain dollar figure was calculated. We're going to be extending it beyond the original end date when we're supposed to make a decision. So there'll be, those more, we'll be adding to the payments we initially had on the schedule. That's what I'm saying, before we make a purchase decision.
Right. So some
Right.
of
You
that's
looked at
paying
that?
down the cost of the acquisition of the equipment. And then we had talked this evening as well about if we do decide for a purchase, there's some consideration about stainless steel components, some other conversations that need to take place. So we're not at a point where I think I could make a recommendation for a purchasing decision. I think we still have work that needs to be done. But we are at least at a point where we're seeing, I think, from the numbers that they showed tonight, we've been able to basically take almost 239 wet tons of material and turn it into 77.5 dry tons, which is spread on a farmer's field and reused. So in that respect, that process seems to be working. There is some benefit to us in terms of not hauling wet sludge upstate and having to dispose of it at a landfill. But all these factors have to be put into an analysis, and then I think we have to have a conversation about the board's interest in purchase and going forward. So that's all part of that conversation. I also included in there, just for your information, a proposal from our plant engineering firm. And the reason I put that in there is we've been running into some wear and tear sort of operations maintenance issues with some of our equipment. And you saw some of those today as we walked around the plant. You saw some of the RBC units, you saw some of the other sort of hardware that's experiencing some wear and tear.
Yeah.
I wanted to get a better handle on all of our systems and what we need to be looking at in terms of additional types of investment if we have to make those, and what those potential costs might be. So the board has a full handle on not only the commitment of current debt and capital, plus this decision about how we're going to handle our sludge and materials handling, but also other major capital that might be going into the operation of our facility, so that you feel confident that we have a full picture of what we're looking at before we make a determination about rates. So this was in there, not necessarily for permission, just for you to see it, that we're working through those numbers as well, because I think it's important for you to have that information so that you're fully informed when we come back and try to make rate decisions. Because those do impact people, and I think we want to feel good that everything that we're proposing, you have a full sense of the scale of what we're trying to accomplish. And then the final piece that I just wanted to say is, we do have billing that we do for our other users, not just our residents, but we also bill Walpole as well. They're part of this plant, part of the overall operations and maintenance, and they do pay a percentage of the overhead, not only of the capital, but also of the operations.
Improvements and stuff.
So as we go forward, those decisions also will impact how much we would bill for them as well, if they're for participating in these types of investments in the facility as well. So,
Scott, the question I have is what I would like to know as a trustee is that that the sewer plant is operating according to the expectations of its operations. And I think we had obviously we were led through this process with an engineering firm. I don't think it was Aldrich and Elliott. I think it was a different.
Oh, initially? No.
There was
We've
a
had
woman that we
we've had
used to.
different engineering firms in here that at different times,
The-
they were part of, I think, one of the.
Oh, D&G, that was one of them, so.
Right.
I forget, but there was a woman that we talked to. She came to several of our meetings.
Yeah.
Particularly when the project was they were doing a project, and And we wanted to be sure that we were under the funding capital and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I don't know if, of course, I'm thinking her name was Cynthia, but Cynthia
It's
just
something
left.
like that,
But
yeah.
it was, but but I think that, and also that, you know, when you go through this major renovation that we've gone through, to have major pieces of equipment come up for replacement, you know, it sort of feels like we just did it yesterday. I know we didn't just do it yesterday,
Right.
but I think, you know,
We're at the
if we're,
10-year life of a lot of that cycle of the last round from Headworks and the
Right.
RBCs, but the question is, are we, because of the capacity and the volumes we're processing, are we wearing out at a 7 to 8 year cycle, not a 10-year cycle?
Well,
And
right.
that's one of
And-
the things I just don't have an answer on right now.
right. The problem with switching, and I don't know if we're switching engineering firms, is that what typically happens, and I saw it recently at the high school in the HVAC systems, okay? They had one engineer that engineered the replacement of all of these units just a couple of years ago. And they go and they hire a new firm, and they come up and they say, there's millions of dollars that need to be spent on the HVAC system. Here, the board is under the impression that that's behind us, okay? I don't know where that's going to sort out. But my concern about switching engineering firms is just that is, if a new firm comes in, does this give them a great opportunity to,
Well, they did design work on your last update, Aldrich and Elliott.
they did.
So
Okay.
might
Yeah,
have been
so
designers.
they're a continuation. It might
Okay,
be
so
a
I-
different
I
senior
want some-
engineer, that I don't know of.
Yeah, yeah,
But
the
these folks
engineering
have
firm
been
is
here
different.
before, were part of that
Right.
last design.
Okay.
I think
So-
what we need is we need to
Right.
have we need continuity in
Yes.
terms of our,
Yeah, I don't want anybody coming,
engineering.
I'm not looking for a redesign of our existing.
and I think that
And,
this,
and, you know, that would drive us all up the wall.
well, and I think that
Yeah.
if the expectation was 10 years and it's going to be 8 years, you know, clearly this finance committee that you want to function,
Mhm.
this obviously, you know, having boards aware of what's coming
Right.
is something that's been lacking since I've been on the board. And it would be nice to at least set it in motion such that boards weren't surprised, because there's turnover. I mean, we have,
Right.
you know, each time, this time, the voters, you know, there was only 3 of us. So
Yeah.
we have some continuity
But next year might be different.
this year, but next year it could be 3 new people.
Sure.
And so,
Well, a big facility and a plant like that, really, you guys should have a 5 and a 10-year capital look. right?
absolutely.
And so I think that's my goal, is to try to get you there.
Yeah.
And then we're all comfortable, and that changes over time too, because technology changes. I'm sure we're going to get changes in the types of regulation, the types of materials that are coming through the way, you guys know that. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
But still, you have a plan.
But at least the
better than
board
nothing.
would feel
There's a plan.
confident when we look at these rates, yeah, this is why we're doing this, and this is what we think is coming, and you could explain that to a ratepayer and feel good about, these are why we're justifying what we're charging for this facility. So that's really the goal here. And
Good.
we're working on those numbers for you as well, so we can have that conversation.
So this is an early look. We'll probably see
Very early look, right.
That's good. Yes, that, having capital schedules would have avoided a lot of the other concerns about payments and all that. So we know when it winds down, we know when we're picking up a new bond, because I'm assuming 10-year plan requires some bond money.
Yes.
So those are things that keep us on track, so we know how we
Right.
have to spread out our costs and increases that
I
have
mean, in the
to or
perfect
don't have
world,
to
we
happen.
get grants, but I think we all, it's optimistic. Most of the capital we're probably going to get are going to be loans.
Yeah.
And that's going to be long-term debt, and we have to take a hard look at that.
But when you look at the sewer treatment plant industry, and you look at what we've got down there, I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer. That's something that should be embraced by that industry. And you know, it would seem as though, and more of it's probably being done than I'm aware of, but it sounds like we're
We're sort
one
of
of
the area
few
leader.
people
Yeah.
that have the the piece of equipment,
When
but
I was in Ohio, we had a plant, but it was a wet sludge that was applied to the fields. And I got to tell you, when they applied that stuff, it was horrific.
Oh, yeah, I worked for
The
a hose company
smell,
that sold the hoses
mean,
that
whew.
put that stuff out, yep.
It was
sludge
hard to
was-
be it was hard to be within 20 miles of some of these fields when they did the applications in the spring.
Yeah,
It
but they don't
was-
spray anymore, they're not allowed to.
So, well, they were injecting.
Yes,
This was
they do
soil
that, yeah.
injection,
Right.
but it's
Yeah.
still, I don't care.
It's still
It
mess.
was horrific.
goodness,
So
yeah.
this process is like,
So much easier.
oh my goodness.
Like it's
Yeah.
all-
You
Well,
wouldn't, you
just
wouldn't be
the
able to
impact on the
stand down
environment, but
there.
it just seems to me
Right.
it's the kind of thing that there might, that grants might apply to something like
Uh-huh.
this. I
Would
don't
push
know,
it.
but I mean, it's worth keeping an eye out
Yes,
for.
it's definitely worth going out there and trying to get, see if we can. And then the other thing we talked about, and I think that's going to impact as we go forward, is the flood proofing.
Mhm.
We are
Yeah.
vulnerable. We
We were
are on the
talking about it,
Connecticut
yeah.
River.
I got it.
We've had situations where we've had floods, and the last thing we want to do is lose all this expensive equipment because it's been underwater for, some period of time. So
Yeah.
flood proofing is critical
Yeah.
to make sure we protect that investment. We're not going anywhere. I mean, that plant's.
No, Rob showed Stephen and I the material to put those up.
That would seem like a project that VLTC would want to partner with us.
Oh, floodplain stuff?
Well,
You know, they write the insurance for
they
us,
do
right?
write your insurance, and they do come down and look, and
And, you know,
it does reduce
that'd
your,
be a hell of a
does reduce
insurance
your
claim.
liability, that's for
Yeah.
sure. So when you can flood-proof your building and be able to preserve,
And
multi-million dollar
keep something
investments.
running,
Mhm.
you know, instead,
Yeah,
I mean,
through-
you
through
Yeah.
an
you
emergency, yeah.
wouldn't run it through a flood, but I mean, you'd shut it down and
At least all your electrical components wouldn't
Yeah.
be underwater and ruining all
Exactly,
those
yeah.
motors and blowers and all that expensive
Yeah,
equipment, so.
Having it flood the Connecticut River, which is so close to.
Well, that's not a great outcome either.
No, I
Having all
know.
that discharged into the water
No.
would not be a great outcome either, so.
I have one last
Yeah.
question
Yeah,
on
go
this.
ahead. Yep.
It's kind of an off-the-wall question, but
Mm-hmm.
the sludge quality certificate we got from New Hampshire,
Yes,
is there a fee for that? Do we actually
we had to pay for
pay for
testing.
that?
And we pay them a fee for the application, just like
Yeah.
you would pay for
I-
your plant license or
Yeah,
your other
I
type
figured.
of licensing.
Yeah,
I was
So-
just curious. I
There's a
figured it
separate one
probably
for
was.
And we're
Vermont,
doing a
too.
separate one for New Hampshire, and, let's hope that New Hampshire follows through and gives us the same.
under
for
Vermont.
Vermont.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, for Vermont.
They have a slower process.
Yeah, we seem a little slow. Maybe we're more thorough, I'm not quite sure, but
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
we would
Well,
like to have both.
Can't you show them our certificate from New Hampshire and say, oh, they
Hurry
gave us
up.
one, aren't
That's
you ready to
right.
give us a duplicate?
Well, there are a lot of farmers. I think there are a lot of people that want that material, so.
Well, one of our reps at the state is the chair, I think she's the chair of the agriculture
Oh,
committee.
Carolyn Partridge.
Carolyn Partridge.
Yep,
hmm.
And,
she's a farmer herself. She ought to come down and take a look at the
that might
project.
be, I don't know if she's an organic farmer,
I don't know that.
but the, you know, it might pay to contact her because she's
prob-
very,
I'll look
very
into it.
up
Yeah.
to speed on all things agriculture, so.
Great.
Okay. And so does that sort of cover 1 and 4?
Little bit, we sort of jumped around,
Okay, so
yeah.
do you want to, then in that case, do you want to finish the discussion on the rates? Because we're not setting rates
We're
tonight.
not setting rates. I'm not
Maybe
gonna have
next
a,
meeting, probably.
the next meeting, we might have at least a draft to
Yep.
go through.
Okay.
And again, we're still gathering, as you heard Cynthia say tonight, we've got to go through our current long-term debt schedules and our amortization schedule, and then go through some of this other plant-related capital. And then I'll at least have an opportunity to talk to you about where we stand with a recommendation.
So
So,
that'll be forthcoming.
But the rates change in October, you know, I mean,
September,
the
I
new
believe.
bill goes out in October.
right.
So if
If
we're
we
gonna
don't have a
change rates,
recommendation for October, we'll have to do it for the spring.
Wait, okay, so
So,
when do
it
the
just-
bills
it's just
go
a-
out? I thought the bills
September,
go
I
out in
thought.
September for October.
Right, it's
Right.
payable in October.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
So
I
our
don't know if
second
we'll have
meeting-
everything done in time to have a full recommendation for
second meeting of the
September.
but
Probably
you
like
know,
the-
we're
Right,
under
a full
this,
week before.
we have this commitment with the bond bank
Right,
Yeah.
right.
for an increase in water rates. I know that.
Well, I think
And
probably you will have some clarification when they
On
meet with the
Thursday.
bond
Correct.
bank.
Yeah.
I'll
And
talk
I
to
think
them
that would be
about
important to
exactly
come-
talk to them because.
What may
Right.
be what.
I don't remember the letter. did we ever get a letter? Saying exactly what we had to do for this following year.
Well, I know it was last spring. Something, the bond bank got very concerned about our debt load.
And that was why we had the large increase.
And,
Right, we did
and I
two
thought we
fairly
committed to
significant.
2 annual increases of 3% or something
So
like
it
that.
might be there. It's just, yeah, be great.
Well,
to
that was the
get
RCAP
clarified.
study, but the bond bank had weighed in on as part of that,
Right.
so.
Well, because of lending, had to do with lending and the way things were, numbers were disclosed, things were not reported properly. That came from the previous financial director, which had an impact on whether they wanted to continue. That was what we were told. The reason why we might lose our bond funding. So
Right.
that didn't happen, and we'll hope for a good
So
report.
you're right on with the bond bank.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
Yep,
good.
moving through.
All right, that takes us to the last item on here, which is actually number 2, which is the discussion of the pursuit policy with the Bellows Falls Police Department.
So I just incorporated in the packet for tonight's meeting, a copy of our existing policy. Some information that came through the press, but I'm sure there's been discussion about an incident that occurred here recently in town. I didn't ask Dave to come only because he really can't comment on the current case because of the state attorney and the fact that it's active litigation. They didn't really want us to have a full public conversation about an active case that has, it has not been fully adjudicated. But it was brought up, and I think that it was an area of interest that I at least wanted to get on your agenda, get some conversation with the board about feedback, and then we've also asked VLCT to take a look at our compliance with this incident. We did talk to the state attorney about that, and they were agreeable to that. So we're working on getting them a package. They know our policy, obviously, because they review our policies when they underwrite all of our insurances. What we asked them to do is they do have a public safety specialist who will take a look at the digital records, whatever radio transmissions, whatever body cam or other car camera data, and then give us feedback in terms of compliance with our existing policy. So we'll have an independent third party taking a look as well. Chief and I have done a preliminary review based on the write-ups that are required under the policy, but I think it's still helpful to have somebody outside of our appointed staff take a look and just give us their opinions and guidance as to either things we did well, things that they would recommend we do better, that type of thing, and just make sure that we're in a good place. So that process will be underway. We did talk to them last week, and we're putting together, we have to put one package together, obviously, that relates specifically to the prosecution of the existing case. Then we'll have to get copies, now that we have permission from the state attorney, to then get copies to VLCT so they can take a look as well. So we're working on that.
What would be helpful, I think, it would be to get what's your approach to pursuit out of the village. Obviously,
Right.
this is yours and the Chief Bemis's purview. We each might have opinions. I'm sure we do, but
Sure.
but clearly, I think the important thing is where you're at with
The preliminary
with
data
that.
that I looked at, I think meets all of our criteria in relationship to the officer that responded, and then the way that we at least initiated the response. It's a little unclear to me, the state police issues, and it could be related to staffing, it could be related to other problems, that they were not actively engaged in that portion of it, and that's something we have to get a sense of or a handle on. The outcome, I think, again, because we still are in court, we have multiple
Oh, I'm not thinking about that
felonies
case.
that we have to deal with. But
I'm not. I don't care about that.
pursuit in general, it's
Yeah.
a discretionary issue with an officer, because you have to look at what's the level of impairment, what's the level of danger to the public, and is that allowing that condition to continue worse than pursuing somebody to try to stop it, right? And that's a very difficult line to try to
Tough one.
I
to
would like
try
to
to
ask
understand.
you to look at the screen. It says something to you. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, if we're losing signal, whatever it's doing.
It might be trying to update. No,
Yep.
it doesn't, it wants me to,
I'll say no.
it's just one of these systems.
Oh, yes, I get it on the Service Pro.
We're still good on
Okay.
our audio and visual.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
It was just
interrupt.
one of the PC things. So that's a, those lines are difficult to ascertain.
And I appreciate you supplying this, although it doesn't look like it's something that's been amended by our department. It came straight from a specific institute.
Right.
And it's a sort of a cut and paste kind of thing.
Well, CALIA is the standard for all police departments
Yeah.
across, and that's what they use for certification.
Okay,
And so anybody that has a police department, the standards that they're going to implement have to, I would say 99% apply to CALIA. So that's where they come from.
okay.
So these are pretty standard across the country. Now, how they're implemented in each state is a little different because every state has a little different nuance to how they police. But
The, with the exception of across the river, Walpole, North Walpole, they have a police department. The other parts of the town of Rockingham people have adamantly declined to have police coverage. Our neighbors to the south have, adamantly determined that in the best interest of their citizens not to have a police department. They're happy to rely on the state police and the sheriff. And people in Bellows Falls that we represent have felt that we want coverage here in the village, and we pay for it. So my feeling is that when a vehicle leaves the village, I would hope that the basic policy was to notify the state police and sheriff that there's a problem. And then hopefully those communities who rely on that coverage will get the value that they are paying for.
I think the tricky part of that is the behavior that's witnessed, the type of driving and the type of danger that might be perceived. If you're an officer, if you cut that off at a point, then, there is liability questions about what is the responsibility that you initiated in the first place, knowing that you had some sort of erratic driving or some other problem that endangered the public. That's where it gets very tricky and why it becomes very discretionary.
So there is a liability issue.
If you're an officer and you witness a certain type of activity, right, and somebody's operating a vehicle in a manner that's unsafe, and you've initiated some type of activity, which we did, and then at some point there's a decision to stop, and there is, that person's continuing to operate and they're still not in a condition that's probably safe for the motoring public, there is some liability.
I think what some people need also is to be educated and updated. For example, I just looked at this briefly, the article that appeared, plus then you heard the scuttlebutt.
Well, that's a little different sometimes.
Right, and I don't want to comment really on anything that's in an ongoing investigation or anything, but I mean,
Right.
these officers, full-time, they're police officers, they're certified, not just in Bellows, they're certified Vermont police
Oh,
officers.
right, I realize
They can go
that.
anywhere in the States, just like a trooper.
Right.
I caught part of this, I believe, on the radio that wee hours of the morning, and there's a reference here, an initial stop for the probable cause was a tail light. That's not what I understood or heard. Kind of what I heard was a description given out maybe of a vehicle that probably had, or in that description, a faulty tail light. But hearing somebody afterwards and reading this here,
Yes.
the, the, it was appeared to be a manner of operation. Basically, the best policy, if somebody's behind you with blue lights, you probably ought to pull over because there's a reason for it. But I also read this in great detail today, which is our policy
Yes.
on pursuit, et cetera. And I read the hot pursuit definition and what qualifies as. And I'm not an attorney, but I've been around here long enough. I did have some education in law enforcement. I believe that the village was, according to the policy, within their right and operating by the policy. That said, I just think some people were under the impression that they don't have no authority beyond the village limits. That's not true.
No, I didn't.
No, no,
Right.
that's not
But
it.
there is a lot of misconception out there that some people have that,
Right.
because some of them actually spoke with me saying, you know, as much as we all hate to see our cars outside of the village, if there's a reason for it or a pursuit initiates in from the village out, and I agree, yeah, I'm sure there's protocol to notify, I'm in your jurisdiction, same as if they cross the river. But I mean, from what I've read, I think it was good.
Pursuit's tough, right? Because it's dangerous to everyone. It's dangerous to the officers. It's dangerous to the people that might not even be aware what's going on because situations can get out of control. Anytime you have a crash, that's not a great situation.
No.
Yeah,
And
So
it's
I,
possible the pursuit caused the crash. I'm saying the person was
Well-
in the wrong and should pull over. If you're followed by a police officer, you
yeah.
should pull over, you should stop. But that didn't happen. Sometimes people die from pursuits, especially if it's not,
Right.
and again, it's all
well,
perception and it's all up to the discretion of the officer. I understand that.
right.
But it's still concerning, and it's not, and this is not a case of leaving the village, as far as I'm concerned. It's a case of perhaps they could have done what's on page 8, which was to wait and catch the person when they come back into town. They wouldn't necessarily have caused an accident or had a crash if the pursuit hadn't occurred. Anyway, I don't think we have a lot of them. We do have a lot of officers leaving town. We have a lot of complaints from people saying that. I don't know how many of you guys hear. Some people don't get any. I know some trustees don't hear anything. But the reality is they pay us to try and do something about it. I just want to let the public know, the trustees do not control the police department. I will listen to
Well, that's
every single
the-
complaint you
one
call
of
me,
the
but
other
you can call
misconceptions.
anybody. You can call, I know, and that's their perception. You can call
mean-
Chief Bemis, you can
Yeah.
call the manager. But if you call me, I'll send the information along, but we can't, even as a body, control the police department. That's up to the manager. Just
But-
making sure the public is aware, because they feel that we're complicit in things they don't like to see.
Right,
And that
and-
we are inactive, or we accept what they're doing because.
I think
we
we're
don't-
very
Well,
sensitive to trying to
sure.
operate in the village, but I also think that, we have a small department. We try as much as we can to be as regional as we can, because some of the problems that we have here don't just stay in Bellows Falls. You guys are
Right.
well aware of that. They come in and out of our community, and so we're working with other agencies and we're doing other things, and so I do appreciate sometimes that it's frustrating if you see somebody somewhere and think, well, why aren't you, in the town limits specifically? And part of that is, I think, because we are working multi-jurisdictionally to address some of these larger problems that we're facing here. Yeah.
Some people out there, and one individual contacted me from Saxon River, is under the impression that it's townwide police, and it's
And it's not.
But I mean, there's the misconceptions out there.
Well, they keep asking us for speed enforcement, and I keep
Right.
saying, well, unfortunately, your relief, if you want, or you can get a contract with the sheriff,
mean-
but
I
that's
think
basically,
they're signing ones,
Well,
according to their minutes.
they're talking about
We
it.
can have
Signing
some
one, yeah.
discussion on the contract, because I have a little history here.
Mm,
At the time, one entity was contracted with the sheriff's department, and when they approached us at the time, when I was here on the board, I think Kay was at the helm,
Okay, Anderson.
what they paid only equated to basically 2 point something hours per week. And when we were approached, it was roughly that same dollar amount, and they wanted a full-time person, and that wasn't gonna happen on the backs of the village taxpayers. And we're not gonna,
And Westminster had been interested in having us policing them, remember that?
Oh, yeah.
A couple years ago. But they didn't want to pay what it would cost us for a police
They wanted us
officer
to,
and a car
beat
and
the,
insurance.
to
But-
beat the
Beat the
sheriff.
sheriff's price.
Not getting too far off the subject.
That's
We're gonna auction here,
So,
auction
yeah.
off
Something like
police
that.
services.
With the transparency that we now have, and I think is greater and is better than it was before, we also, until otherwise, it's important that we support our police.
Mhm.
You know, the blue line, the blue, with all this defund the police and all that. Take a look what's going on in the rest of the state. You just had a chase up there in Berlin, I believe,
Mm.
where because an individual, or I won't say what I personally think, but if they had just pulled over and stopped instead of causing the damage that they had caused, and then, you know, I think it was a stolen car and wrecked a bunch of vehicles going
Yeah.
through the business district and the residential district. I mean, come on. It's common sense too, but there, and blame and responsibility has to be where.
Well, those are fine line situations, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they
Sure.
spiral out of control. And I think what the goal here is to try to make sure, and that's kind of why I wanted a third party to also take a look to say,
Right.
Mhm.
you know, we have our own biases. We all do. We're all
Sure.
human beings. So
But being fair, I mean,
to have a third party kind of look at it and not have any knowledge of who these folks are or really
Right.
what other types of, you know, experiences they might be bringing, I think is helpful to us.
Changes in best practices. I mean, this is from 2010. It may be.
It's a 2013 policy, and,
Yeah,
and you know,
okay.
the state is slow, right? We just talked
Yeah.
recently about use of force,
Yep.
which everybody's now changing because of
Right.
recent events nationally.
Mhm.
So
we talked about cameras.
cameras
and there's
is
some-
another reason.
Something in the press, I think it was a union leader, one of the papers I read, I'm not sure, but the New Hampshire legislature said, no, they weren't gonna fund cameras for the troops. Or it was one or the other,
The state police, it was state police, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that. But I mean, I thought, okay,
So policing is changing, and maybe sometimes a little slowly, and maybe not as maybe some people are not happy with some of those changes, but I think in the long run, they're beneficial. I think it's
Right.
being more responsive. I think the inquiries about this issue are helpful because it helps explore, get information out to the community. And there's always 2 points of view. I'll be the first to admit, right? I've heard criticism, I've heard support. I'm sure individual members have heard the same, some criticism and some support. And, you know, I think what we can do is acknowledge that we're working to be the best trained, most responsive, and hopefully, you know, avoiding these types of situations. But if they occur, we're going to try to make sure that they don't have a bad outcome. And I think that's what we're all concerned about. And I think that's ultimately all of our concern.
you know, not getting to this too, but I think there was input from the U.S. attorney in Vermont that, and Google it yourself to see what the impression I got from what I read was, you know, with the lack of, you know, some officers are hesitant to put themselves into
Oh, the
more
VT
liability.
Digger article, the
Yeah.
one that just came out? Right.
Yes. So,
I didn't see today.
you know,
Well, we don't want hesitancy because I think
Exactly.
at the end of the day, we're all looking for a standard of enforcement. And I
Right.
think what we want it to be is we want it to be fair, we want it to be reasonable.
Sure.
We
Yep.
want our officers to be accountable. I'm
And
not
the-
saying that they have a
sure.
free hand to do anything anytime.
and the residents
but-
expect a service, and, you know, unfortunately, there are bad people out there.
Well,
But I
that-
think,
yeah,
that, you know, certainly as I said to somebody, this is a teaching moment. I think it's important that you and the chief are working with the officers in terms of, you know, their first and foremost, it's the protection of the residents of Bellows Falls.
Yep.
And you do have discretion to pursue outside of town if the circumstances call for it. I think it's clear that a taillight versus erratic driving is
Right.
a
well,
hell
probable
of a
cause is, that's
hell
a
of a
big
difference
difference.
there.
I would agree
And-
with you.
and
I
you
would
know, for
wholeheartedly agree. Taillights aren't going to harm most people
No.
in the traveling
Right.
public.
no, and I think that you know, maybe it's more exciting, but you know, we want the coverage right here in Bellows
I
Falls.
agree.
Just to finish off on the BFPD discussion, I've had some recent complaints about not ticketing. And that's another concern. I know we do some, but If you've been
What
down-
kinds of offenses are we talking about then?
Well, just parking offenses.
Oh,
Just down the
parking?
village, I mean, it's been, I mean, not my, I don't care, but
Okay,
a lot
well,
of people complain about the non-moving, and in certain places, in certain neighborhoods down in the village, like Canal Street, the people who live there stay there all day. I've heard many complaints about not being able to find a parking place just to run into J&H and get your thing 10 minutes and get out. And there's not enough ticketing being done, because, you know, it's based upon time and availability. I don't know if there's an officer dedicated to it. I haven't seen anybody when I'm down in the square. But it has gotten a little out of control. It's summer weather. It's
Mhm.
kind of things that happen, but our businesses would like people to get their goods and move along and not stay stuck in one place all day.
Okay.
So that they can.
we can look at that
rotate.
as a point of emphasis.
Yeah, increase their income as much as we can by moving traffic along. That's it on that.
Okay.
And I think that's the last one. There is an item that, did you want to do that? or Not?
Well, I think it's more of executive session.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Do we want an executive session this evening? It would take a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I'd like to.
And I'd like to hear maybe an update on if you've gotten any applications and how things are going in the process for a new finance director.
Oh,
Have you even started that? Have you even gotten?
Yes, we've advertised.
Okay.
Had a couple inquiries, but I haven't had any applications.
8:01. So
Yep.
if we could do that, just a very brief executive session on an employment. Which one is it? You figure it out.
Well,
But when we get there,
yeah.
you asked for it, so.
let's wrap up the rest of it.
Review agenda items for next meeting. Things that we'll have on there, that's the.
We
14th
talked
of
about the
September.
draft financials.
Financials.
draft
We'll have, as
financials.
well as some updates on our rates,
Yeah.
water, sewer.
Yep.
That's great. I don't know what else we need to have on here at this point that comes up. I talked to Scott about our, they're going out to bid soon for oil and propane.
Yeah, we'll have those
And,
awards.
Yep, and then are we gonna award them at the September 28th meeting with the joint board? Because that's what we usually do, is
Yeah.
a joint board meeting.
Right.
Okay, so they can do that. So I guess that's enough of this one. Review items for the joint board meeting, that'll be one,
Yes.
oil and propane.
Well, and we know the other one is the 66 Atkinson Street.
Yeah, where's that going? If it's still standing when we get to that meeting.
It will be, but you'll have you'll have a decision to make about
Right.
a tear down at
Okay.
that point. We're going to have bids from the contractors, so there'll be a decision to be made.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, there was another thing for the agenda item for next meeting. The ordinance committee will be presenting doing a brief presentation on the draft ordinance committee on the September 14th.
A specific section or
This is
just their
all of
overall
the
work?
Overall, because we need
Okay.
to, because we'll be wanting to ask the board to review it, and I figured we could take a month to do that and have questions.
So you just want a report, basically?
Yeah, because we need
Okay.
to approve it just to get to the hearing portion of it.
Right.
So we have to be okay with what's.
All right, so
and
put it
all the
on,
paperwork.
so I'll put it on as a report, not a
Yep, that's
specific.
report.
Right.
There's two of the ordinance
Right.
committee members instead of myself will be here just to
Okay,
touch a couple points.
yep.
All right, so that's one other thing. And then review and review and approve orders, bills, and warrants.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Other business, Scott,
No, nothing?
come on, good God, Wade. What's the matter with me? I don't know what name just came into my head.
I just have a couple things. Where are they here? I just wanted to give a shout out to the not only the Bellows Falls fire folks, but Rockingham and North Walpole as well for their assistance at the a week ago last Thursday during the flooding.
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah.
They pitched in and helped out once they were called, and that worked out well. And I also just had a quick complaint on 227 Rockingham Street with rubbish in the driveway.
That were left behind or stuff from the
Been
flood? or
piling
just-
up. No, it's been piling up. For nothing to do with
Oh,
flood.
wow, okay. All right, I'll take a look. Just a complaint, okay.
Okay, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Mowing lawns. I have a culprit across the street, 7 School Street,
Oh,
that they bought the house. I don't think they're there much, but they forgot that I guess the grass grows in Bellows Falls.
Especially with all the
And
rain.
I mean, that's just one, there's many other offenders, but
Right.
I sure would like to have whatever process we have exercised on 7 School Street.
Okay.
Okay. The only thing I would have to say is, again, thanks to everyone who worked all the extra hours because of the flooding. I took a look on the following day, talked to some of the neighbors and that sort of thing. So I know, and that's another project, something else that needs to get done again, taking care of the Underhill. Yeah.
Hyde Hill and that whole,
Hyde Hill and all that whole
Yes.
area,
yeah.
which is apparently
Wells.
always going to be a problem, no matter what you do to it.
We were looking at the 1993, this is so painful when we go back, right? Engineering report. And
28 years ago.
yeah, 28 years ago, and here we are. So
Yeah, wow.
some things still need to be done.
Yep.
But there was work done there just a couple years ago, right?
Some,
Oh, they've done regular work. Yeah,
Yeah.
just this past year they were
Yeah.
working on it.
And Andy lives right up there, as I understand. So, on top of that, it's just hard to keep up on when you've got that much water coming in at that amount.
the amount of
Yeah.
material coming off the side of that hill, it wouldn't have mattered how big of an area we would have had down
Yeah.
below. It wasn't going to matter.
Still, yeah.
So we have to catch debris in other places or retain water. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
So we just can't build a big enough area down at the bottom there.
Right.
To make it work. It just doesn't.
Not without doing something upstream further.
It's got to be upstream.
Yeah.
And you guys see the elevation there. It's going to be a bear to
Mhm.
work
Mhm.
in that ravine. So you're going to have to get above it to really make it,
Do something back
to
up
make a
there.
real impact.
Yeah.
Right. To fix flooding, whatever that's going to be.
I
So-
heard, it was reported to me today, there's 2 or 3 cases of COVID in the village. That's a concern. I know that the schools are getting ready to ask for everyone to mask up in school as we start. That's happening, so just still be careful. If you all get your shots, again, they're saying it doesn't matter. Those are concerns. And lastly, because we're coming up to talking about oil and propane, and we just went down to see the sludge dryer, which seems to be working so nicely. I think it's way past time, as far as I'm concerned, for the municipalities to consider making an investment in alternative fuel and reducing our carbon footprint. I think there's so many other ways that we could do it. We could use methane to power the wastewater treatment plant. We could use solar on the top of this roof and other places like that. There are laminates, there are things that we could do and to reduce our carbon footprint. If we do that, because 2050 is the year that Vermont is expecting us to get down to, I don't know what percentage that is,
Right.
using other solar resources, we can do that. And then it would show to our residents that we're putting the time and the effort in and saving them taxes, because they would save money on the electricity costs and fuel and all that. They would do more and find it easier to do these improvements. I think we haven't done anything. Every year comes up with the same thing. We keep saying oil and propane, and we really need to move forward. The state of Vermont wants us to. There should be grants out there to help us do it. And we should get some of it done, even if it's just one thing a year, one thing every 24 months, but something, instead of just relying upon the same old fossil fuels that we've been using forever. That's all I have to say. Stefan,
I won't debate fossil fuels.
go
I
ahead,
mean,
don't do that. I know.
I'd love to see an electric fire truck or a highway truck out there plowing the roads, 20 below zero for hours on end, and see how long the batteries last. But yeah, solar panels look nice
Well-
up on the roof. On the other note, that boy to the fire personnel, reference to flooding, and the police personnel that were there, and the private homeowners that kept watch and et cetera that night. That is all I have.
Okay, we have made a redetermination that there's no need for an executive session. That
I will-
said trustee can have a conversation with said manager at
Great.
some further future
I'll
date.
move to adjourn.
Okay,
Seconded.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Great, thank you very
Thank
much.